They say silence is peaceful. A balm. A comfort. But after Lily left, silence became something else entirely, a soundless scream that clawed at the walls of my skull. Sleep wouldn't come. Not the first night. Not the second. By the third, I started pacing the apartment, lights off, eyes blurry, like something feral in a cage. The rooms echoed with absence. Her scent had already vanished from the pillows. Her hair, once caught in the shower drain, now nowhere to be found. I couldn't even cry. I just listened. To the creaks of the building, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. But most of all, I listened to the void. That's when I found the radio. It was an old one. Dusty, the kind with a dial that crackled when you turned it. I picked it up at a flea market years ago and never used it. I turned the knob, just to fill the room with something, anything. Static. That dry, endless hiss, like rain falling on paper. I let it play. It gave the darkness texture. It made the apartment feel less like a mausoleum. The first few nights, it was just noise. But it helped me drift, even if only for an hour or two at a time. I started to rely on it, the way a child clings to a nightlight. Then, one night, I don't know how many days in, maybe a week, I was half asleep when I heard it. A voice. Thin. Wet. Just under the static, like it was hiding in the folds of the sound. It whispered. Jonah. My name. I shot up in bed. The room was dark, the radio still hissing beside me. My first thought was that I'd been dreaming. But I was ice cold, trembling. And the voice, I knew that voice. Lily. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I told myself I was just exhausted. I was starting to crack. No surprise. Everyone goes a little mad after a breakup, right? I kept the radio off that night, just to be safe. But the silence was unbearable. By 2 a.m., I caved. I turned the dial, slowly, until the static came back. That hiss, that soft white noise lullaby. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it. It didn't come. Relief. Disappointment. I wasn't sure which I felt more. But just as I began to nod off, there it was again. Clearer this time. Not just my name. Jonah, why did you leave me? My blood went cold. Lily had left me. That was how it happened. There was no begging, no explanation. Just the soft slam of the door and the silence that followed. Now, here she was, speaking to me through broken airwaves. I whispered, Lily. Into the darkness, not even realizing I'd done it out loud. And the static answered. Not with words. But a sound. A low, wet gurgle, like someone speaking underwater. Or choking. Then, softly. I never left. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in bed, spine pressed against the wall, watching the radio like it might grow teeth. The static played on, that same dull hiss, but the voice didn't return. Not again. Just that last whisper, I never left. The sun rose pale through the blinds. Everything looked normal in daylight, the way horrors always do. I almost laughed at myself. Almost. But the moment I stepped into the kitchen, I knew I hadn't imagined it. Written in condensation across the microwave door, barely visible, was a message. Turn it back on. There hadn't been any steam, no kettle boiled, no cooking. The apartment was cold. The letters were crooked, trembling, like someone's hand had shaken while writing them. I touched the glass. Dry. My appetite vanished. I went to work like a ghost, eyes hollow, coffee untouched. I barely spoke, barely heard. I could feel something now, sitting just behind me, always just out of view. The feeling you get when you walk into a room and forget why, except you never remember. That night, I left the radio off again. But around midnight, my phone rang once and stopped. No name. Just a number. All zeros. Then the radio turned on by itself. I swear it did. The dial didn't move, no hands touched it, but the hiss returned, louder than before. Crackling, frantic. Like it was angry. I lunged for it, yanking the cord from the wall. The hiss kept going for 3 full seconds after it was unplugged. Then silence. I sat in the dark, holding the unplugged cord like it was a lifeline. I waited for something else to happen. Nothing did. But when I finally crawled into bed, I found a small object resting on my pillow. A ring. Simple. Silver. Slightly tarnished. Lily's ring. The one I gave her on her birthday 2 years ago. The one she threw into the river when she left. I remember it exactly. I remember the way it arced in the air before vanishing into the water, her back already turned. But now, here it was. Sitting exactly where her head used to rest at night. I didn't touch it. I didn't sleep. Just watched the ring. And listened to the radio. Even though it was still unplugged. And somewhere, faintly. Jonah. I'm so cold. I didn't go into work the next day. I couldn't. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the ring. It hadn't moved. It didn't pulse or whisper or melt into shadow like some gothic fever dream, no, it just sat there. Ordinary. Familiar. And somehow, completely wrong. I put it in a drawer. I told myself I'd throw it away later. But I didn't. Not yet. I avoided the bedroom, the radio, the dark. I turned every light on in the apartment and let the TV play nonsense all day. Nature documentaries. Something about penguins. I wasn't watching. I just didn't want to hear the static. It was past midnight when my phone buzzed again. The screen lit up. No name. Just the number again. 000000000. I didn't answer. But the voicemail icon blinked immediately after. Against my better judgment, I played it. Nothing at first. Just a hiss. That familiar, steady hiss. Then her voice, cutting through like a needle through silk. Jonah. I forgive you. A pause. But they won't. Click. I dropped the phone. I didn't mean to. It just slipped. My hands were shaking. My legs carried me back to the bedroom, slow as sleepwalk. The radio was plugged in again. I know I didn't do it. I know. And now the static was playing softly. Calm. Like it had never stopped. I hovered by the doorway. Lily? I asked, barely a whisper. The hiss faltered, for just a second, like it had heard me. Then, clear as glass. Don't you remember the basement? That was the moment something inside me turned. Because there was a basement. In the old place. The one we'd lived in before this apartment. A drafty Victorian duplex, all creaking floors and curling wallpaper. There was a basement there, I'd always hated it. Stone walls, no windows, single dangling bulb. I avoided it, even when we lived there. Lily used to say she had dreams about it. That something lived beneath the stairs. That it called her. Back then, I laughed it off. But now. Why are you doing this? I asked the static. There was a long silence. A long, deep silence. Then, in a voice that was almost hers, almost, it whispered. Because you buried the truth, and now it's growing. I couldn't move. My feet were stone. My chest a furnace. And for the first time, I thought I saw it, just a flicker, a shadow on the far wall, where there was nothing to cast one. It wasn't shaped like Lily. It was something else. There's a kind of fear that doesn't make your heart race, it makes it stop. That's what I felt when I saw the shadow. It didn't move like a person. It flickered, like a reel of film catching in the projector, there, not there, there again, distorted. I didn't blink. I don't think I could have if I tried. It stretched long across the far wall, and I swear its head turned. I backed out of the room slowly, like if I didn't break eye contact with the shadow that wasn't mine, it wouldn't follow. The static from the radio grew softer behind me, but it wasn't fading, it was sinking, like it was burrowing through the walls, deeper into the floorboards. Toward the basement. But not the one in this apartment. The other one. The one we lived in before everything fell apart. I hadn't thought about that basement in years. I never wanted to. The last time Lily and I fought, the real fight, the one that cracked the foundation, it had started upstairs. But it ended in that basement. She wanted to talk. I didn't. She wanted to confess something. I refused to hear it. We shouted. Doors slammed. I left. When I came back the next morning, she was gone. No note. No calls. Just, gone. And the basement door? Slightly ajar. I remember it clearly now. The smell of mildew. The faint sound of dripping. A coppery tang in the air. And something else, something I couldn't name, something ancient. I never went down. I didn't want to know. Until now. At 3:17 a.m., the static returned, not from the radio this time, but from the apartment intercom. That old metal box by the door hadn't made a sound in years. But now it crackled, stammered, breathed. And then, through the tiny speaker. I'm still down here, Jonah. That voice. Too soft. Too far away. As if it were traveling through concrete and dirt. I didn't remember pressing the button, but I must have, because I whispered back, "What do you want from me?" There was a pause. Then a click, the intercom died. I stared at it, waiting for something more. But the room was quiet. No radio, no static. Just silence. And for the first time in days, that silence felt worse. I went to the drawer. Pulled out the ring. It was warm. Too warm. Like it had been clutched in someone's hand all night. Something was waiting. Not just in the radio. Not in the shadows. It was in me now. And I think I knew, even then, what I had to do. I had to go back to the house. To the basement. To what I'd left buried. The drive back to the old house felt like drifting into the mouth of something that remembered me. It was still there, a crooked duplex with peeling green shutters, nestled at the end of a narrow street where the trees leaned just a bit too far into the road, as if they were listening. I hadn't been here in over a year, not since Lily disappeared. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. The for sale sign was gone, but the porch light was off, and the curtains were drawn like eyelids in sleep. I parked down the block and walked the rest of the way, rain drizzling soft as breath on my shoulders. I didn't have a key anymore, but the back door opened without resistance. Like it had been waiting. Inside, it was cold. Not the kind of cold that stings the skin, the kind that settles into your bones like it belongs there. Nothing had changed. The stain on the hallway ceiling. The faded rug we found at that thrift shop in Maine. The faint scratch marks on the baseboard from where Lily's cat used to claw during storms. All of it frozen in time, untouched by new memory. I moved slowly, my steps strangely muffled. There were no echoes in that house. None. And then I stood before it, the basement door. It looked smaller than I remembered, but heavier. The knob felt damp beneath my hand. I hesitated, not out of fear, but recognition. Some part of me knew this door hadn't simply led to a basement. It led backward. To the night she left. To the words I didn't let her say. To whatever had been breathing beneath our home long before we ever moved in. I opened it. The smell hit me first. Damp, old wood. Stone. And something metallic, sharp. Like iron left too long in the rain. I descended. The light bulb at the top flickered but held. Everything below was swallowed in black. I reached the bottom, and the quiet was unbearable, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting to speak. Then came the static. Not from above. From the dark itself. Hissing, whispering, hungry. And then the voice. I was trying to tell you, Jonah. I wanted to show you what I found down here. My throat closed. I remembered her face that night, pale, wet with tears, eyes wide with something more than sadness. Terror. And I remembered the sound she made as I slammed the basement door on her words. A sound not of heartbreak, but warning. A sound I hadn't heard again, until now. Then the bulb above me popped, and I was in total darkness. And beneath my feet, something shifted. Total blackness has a weight to it. Not like a blanket or a fog, but something ancient and deliberate, like a pressure on the soul. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, not breathing. The shattered light bulb above me still fizzled faintly, like a dying star. The static continued, low and close now, like it was crawling along the walls. Something brushed my ankle. I froze. Not a rat. Not wind. It felt like fingers. I stumbled backward, groping for anything, my hand landing on the support beam beside the stairs. My breath echoed, and for a moment I swore I heard another exhale, not mine. Then the voice returned. Not whispered now. I showed you, Jonah. I tried to give you the truth. You threw it away. My mouth was dry. My heart felt like it was trying to crawl into my throat. Lily, I said. Please. Tell me what's down here. There was a pause. Then. I'm not Lily anymore. The static surged, and with it came a sudden pulse of light, dim, flickering, sour yellow, like an old emergency lantern sputtering to life. It illuminated the basement in brief, broken flashes. That's when I saw the marks. Carved into the stone walls, spirals, eyes, crooked symbols that made my skin itch. Some were fresh. Some were bleeding. And then, in the far corner, half buried beneath old tarps and boxes. A small door. I had never seen that before. The light died again. But I didn't need it now. Something about the door pulled at me. Not curiosity, compulsion. It was the feeling of remembering something just out of reach, a dream you forgot and now can't stop trying to recover. The static grew louder as I approached. Beneath it, I began to hear other voices layered within. Lily crying. My own voice, angry, distant. And something else, not human. Low, guttural, as though the basement itself were breathing through the static. I knelt before the door. The wood was damp. The handle slick. I gripped it. Turned. Inside, there was no room. Just a shaft, narrow, descending into darkness with stone steps and wet walls. And at the bottom, impossibly far yet close enough to feel, a glow. And movement. The radio in my pocket, I don't remember putting it there, hissed to life. Come see what you buried, Jonah. I stepped in. And the door shut behind me. The moment the door sealed behind me, I heard it, the click of a lock sliding into place, but not like metal on metal. It was wet. Like something breathing against wood. I turned, pressed my hands to the surface, shoved, pounded, nothing. It was solid as stone. The static from the little radio in my pocket had quieted now, almost reverent, as if it too were holding its breath. There was only one direction left, down. The stairwell was tight, carved into old stone slick with moisture. My fingers ran along the walls as I moved, tracing grooves I didn't want to understand, grooves that pulsed, subtly, like veins. The air grew colder. Not just in temperature, but in tone. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the air itself was tuned to a lower pitch. My breath felt thick in my lungs. The radio buzzed faintly with each step, its static folding into what began to sound like music. Distorted, off-key, a lullaby half swallowed by rot. Then, after what felt like miles, I reached the bottom. It opened into a chamber. The glow I'd seen wasn't a light, not really. It came from the walls themselves, pulsing with a soft red hum, like embers beneath skin. The chamber was circular. The floor dirt. The ceiling lost in shadow. And in the center, a chair. Old. Wooden. And bound to it, not with rope, but with long, brittle hair, was a shape. Thin. Slumped. Face down. The voice returned, crackling softly from the radio. You left her here, Jonah. I staggered forward, drawn like a moth to flame. The figure in the chair, it wore Lily's necklace. The one I gave her the year we moved in. A delicate chain with a little silver pine tree, she'd never taken it off, not once. The figure's head twitched. Just once. Enough to let me know, it was alive. I knelt. Lily? My voice cracked. Her head lifted, just slightly. Hair clung to her face, thick and matted. Her mouth moved, but it wasn't her voice that came out. It was mine. Muffled and distant, like a recording played backward. The radio hissed violently, blaring white noise that made me clutch my ears. Then, silence. She looked up. And it wasn't Lily's face. Not anymore. Just my own face, stretched and sunken, eyes missing, mouth full of static. It smiled. And said, "You didn't bury me deep enough." I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body wouldn't obey. My throat locked up like something inside me had seized control and slammed shut every exit. The thing in the chair, the me that wasn't me, leaned forward with a creak of splintering wood. Its mouth opened wider than it should have, jaw unhinging in a slow, deliberate snap. From that black pit of a mouth, the static poured out in waves. It filled the chamber. It filled me. And threaded through it was a voice I hadn't heard since I was a child, my mother's lullaby, warped and distorted, woven into Lily's laughter and the crackle of flame. The figure twitched violently, and the strands of hair binding it began to move, sliding across its arms, coiling tighter, growing out of the floor. I stumbled backward, slipping on the damp stone. That's when I saw the walls. Carved into the chamber, over and over, in desperate, scraping strokes, was my name. Jonah. 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 Dozens. Hundreds. All in the same hand. All bleeding fresh. And beneath every carving, another word. Listen. The static stopped. Abrupt. Like a breath held underwater. The thing in the chair raised its head again, slowly this time, and Lily's face bled back through. Just the eyes at first. That same soft brown, rimmed with gold. Her voice followed. But it was raw. Tired. Wounded in some way I didn't understand. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. "But you were too proud. You turned the volume down when I needed you to hear me." I stepped closer without realizing. "What are you?" I asked. Her head tilted. "You already know." She reached out a trembling hand. Her fingers were cracked. Nails blackened. But still I recognized the small scar on her wrist. From the time she fell through the ice when we were teenagers. She'd shown it to me once like it was something sacred. I took her hand. The moment our skin touched, everything shifted. The walls melted into static, a shuddering wave of sound and memory. Suddenly I was standing in our old kitchen again, and Lily was there, alive, smiling at me as she made coffee. The smell was so vivid. The sun was streaming in just so. But there was something wrong. The coffee was black sludge. The sun was flickering like a dying bulb. And Lily, she never blinked. Not once. She turned. "Don't let it lie to you, Jonah." Then the scene cracked like glass, and the basement swallowed me again. The voice from the radio, deeper now, layered, said, "We can bring her back. But only if you give us your mouth." My lips began to burn. I clutched my face, my lips searing hot as if I'd kissed the coil of a stove. The burning wasn't on the skin, it was inside, behind my teeth, threading down my throat. I couldn't scream. The sound had been taken from me. All around, the chamber pulsed, lightless and alive. The thing in the chair, the thing that wore Lily's eyes and my face, began to rise, creaking as hair split and snapped around it like brittle roots. It stood hunched, limping forward on limbs too long, as though the shape it wore had been stitched together in the dark. It whispered in that wet, borrowed voice. "You don't speak. You broadcast." The radio in my pocket shrieked, a piercing pitch that bent my knees and shattered something behind my eyes. And through that howl, I heard them, all of them. Lily sobbing in the bathroom, whispering things I never heard because I'd left the music on too loud. My father shouting behind a closed door. My own voice, cruel and flippant, saying, "You're being dramatic," again and again like it was a prayer I didn't mean. The static wasn't noise. It was a graveyard of words unspoken. I dropped to the floor, choking, and something slid down my throat, invisible but heavy, like a cold hand curling beneath my tongue. And then I felt it. Something had replaced my voice. It lived there now. I looked up and saw the creature now face to face with me, its mouth moving with my thoughts, speaking for me. Let her go, it said in my stolen voice. Take me instead. But that wasn't what I meant to say. That wasn't what I wanted. And yet, I didn't resist. It smiled. Good, it said. Now you are a conduit. The floor beneath me cracked open like an egg, revealing a pit lined with speakers, ancient, rusted, encrusted with moss and flesh. From them echoed the chorus of every voice I'd ever silenced, not out of cruelty, but out of cowardice, distraction, comfort. The static rose, not deafening but intimate, like a whisper pressed right against your ear in the dead of night. And the voice said, "Speak, Jonah. Let the world hear." I opened my mouth. And the world shook. When I opened my mouth, I didn't feel breath. I felt release. Like a valve turned too far, letting loose something that had been building for years, not just grief or guilt, but sound itself. Words I never said. Apologies I never made. Warnings I never heard. The noise that poured from me wasn't a scream. It was a signal. Low. Beautiful. Terrible. It filled the chamber, surged through the speakers in the pit, and climbed the narrow shaft behind me like smoke rising through the cracks in the world. I felt it rush through the stones, into the wires, the walls, the soil, a siren call for the broken, the grieving, the forgotten. And far, far above, I heard it answer. Radios across the city clicked on. Car stereos buzzed to life on empty highways. Hospital intercoms hissed. Children's walkie-talkies whispered my name. Jonah. 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 The voice, mine, not mine, echoed in every frequency now. I felt my bones rattle with it, each vertebra a tuning fork. The pain was distant. Irrelevant. The static had taken me, but in doing so, it had become me. And Lily? She stepped out from the edge of the pit. Whole. Clean. Eyes sad, but awake. Her voice returned, soft and clear. You heard me, finally. I tried to speak, but my mouth didn't belong to me anymore. It twitched. Twisted. I looked down and saw the flesh around my lips begin to fracture, splintering like dried mud. The voice within was not content. It had tasted the world, and it wanted more. Lily reached out and touched my hand. And for the first time, I felt something simple. Warmth. She looked at me and whispered. You don't have to carry it anymore. I wanted to believe her. But the static laughed. It laughed with the sound of every channel ever left between stations, all the dead space, all the forgotten songs, all the noise we leave behind because it's easier not to listen. And as Lily faded, not vanished, faded, like a song slipping from memory, I was left standing in the center of that red-lit chamber, a mouthful of noise, a throat full of ghosts. The radio in my pocket still works. I keep it turned off. But sometimes, when I'm near an old TV, or a broken speaker, or a baby monitor left on overnight, I hear someone tuning in. They always find me eventually. Because once the signal knows your name, once you've opened your mouth, the broadcast never ends.